Thank you for joining us today on News Talk, everyone. It's good to have you along. Today, we launch a series of Virginia General Assembly debates. Over the next 4 weeks or so, we'll bring you several encounters between incumbent legislators and their challengers. This year's State House elections in Virginia are widely thought to be the most interesting and competitive in a long time. Today's debate is for the Senate seat in the 33rd District. The 33rd covers parts of Loudoun and Fairfax counties. The challenger is Republican Patricia Phillips. Welcome and thank you for coming in. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Also with us is the incumbent, State Senator Mark Herring, a Democrat. Thank you for coming in. It's good to see you. Good to have both of you here. We can't have debates without the candidates, so we appreciate your carving out some time for us and for your participation today. Ms. Phillips, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a small businesswoman. I have been for the last 22 years right here in Northern Virginia. So I started my own business and have been doing that. Certainly filing the paperwork, paying the taxes, meeting payroll and the like. I think it provides a real valuable experience that I can bring down to Richmond on behalf of the voters.
What kind of business?
I'm a nutrition consultant. And I also am a mother, have 2 children, 2 daughters, and I think that brings a real experience in terms of balancing the family budget, recognizing the challenges and struggles that families experience in the district, whether it involves commuting, getting children to and fro, their obligations and commitments, dealing with the traffic, certainly. It's a part of that.
Senator Herring, you're in the legislature. What impact have you made? What difference? Why should voters renew your term?
Well, when I was first elected about a year and a half ago, I was elected in a special election in January of 2006. I told voters that I would be focused on those issues that really affected their quality of life, like improving transportation, helping local communities manage growth and new development, and keeping our schools strong and among the best in the nation. In the area of transportation, we had a lot of work to do, and we've finally begun, after years of inaction and in Northern Virginia being deprived of needed transportation funding, we've finally been able to make some progress in that area. And I'd like the chance to go back and build on that success.
Are there particular things that are different today because of Herring advocacy, a Herring amendment, something you did to block legislation that you think would have been harmful? Can we look at footprints that you've left?
Well, sure. In the area of transportation, which I think is probably the most urgent issue that our district faces, certainly we have now, while it's not a perfect bill, we have a transportation funding package that will bring about $500 million of new transportation funding for Northern Virginia, about $1.5 billion statewide, and all of the new revenue in Northern Virginia will stay in Northern Virginia. I've been a supporter of extending Metro Rail to Dulles and into Loudoun County, and there are some specific projects that really affect the district that I've worked hard on to bring funding to. For example, I helped to secure funding to widen Route 50 between South Riding and Route 28. I helped to secure the state's share of funding for the remaining overpasses that are now under construction on Route 28, which is really making a big difference in people's lives. And there are other projects that are in the works, funding to widen Route 7 between Drainesville and Reston, funding to improve the Leesburg bypass and the Sickland flyover. So a lot of things are now in the works and are underway.
As you know, Ms. Phillips, your party controls both houses of the Virginia General Assembly, and there's been criticism that they've been slow, the legislature has, to recognize the traffic issues that people face in different parts of the state, not just here, but certainly here in Northern Virginia, and that when things have been pushed forward, they've been not big enough to tackle the problem that we face. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the transportation problem is tremendous for Northern Virginia and throughout the state. The thing we need to recognize is that it's been building for many years, for decades really, and it's going to take a lot of different solutions to begin that process of getting Northern Virginians moving again. One of the key things I think we need to look at is the state centralized funding and planning of our road construction and maintenance. What I found is that Virginia is one of 4 states that has centralized road construction. And what I want to look at is decentralizing some of those responsibilities so that the localities have more control and authority over the roads they build and how they do that.
Some people look at Northern Virginia and the enormous economy here as the goose that lays the golden egg, enriching the state treasury from which many state programs are funded, needless to say. Do you view expansion of the road network and steps to ease gridlock here in Northern Virginia as primarily a state or a local
You know, it
problem?
It really is a state issue. And when you consider the...
So are you critical at all of fellow Republicans in the General Assembly for not recognizing that?
Well, I think people downstate both parties don't recognize the important role that Northern Virginia plays, certainly the Dulles Corridor, in terms of helping all of the economy throughout Virginia. It's not just the goose that lays the golden egg, but how it helps, how the Dulles Airport helps build businesses and creates that core international connection with the rest of the world and our global economy. And so it really does help all of Virginia's economy if we can move better and if our economy can be moving more efficiently. Northern Virginia has the second worst traffic in the country. Richmond has the fourth best. We've got a problem with our transportation system in Virginia, no doubt about that.
What's been the legislature's hang-up, do you think, in recognizing more clearly, if you will, the problems people here face every day, getting to work, getting home, maybe trying to get to picking up a child at daycare, getting to a kid's soccer game? It feels as though there's an enormous disconnect between average people and the decision makers.
Well, I think one of the problems is that much of the rest of the state really doesn't suffer from the same problems that we do up here in Northern Virginia with the traffic situation. And that's why I think it's been important to make sure that we don't get too rigid about how we address these problems. And my approach has been to put problem solving ahead of politics, to try and get things done. And that's why I mentioned earlier, while the transportation package wasn't perfect, it was a big step forward, and we are making progress.
What do you mean problem solving?
Well, not getting funding sometimes resulted from individual legislators and many legislators saying funding has to be done a certain way, or it can't be done in any other way. And I think when they have 140 members of a legislature and a problem as significant as transportation, you need to approach it in a way that you're open and flexible to new ideas and new ways of doing things. And you know, it's not only just funding. That's certainly a big part of it. But tackling transportation involves a whole range and array of approaches. It also means better managing growth and development so that we don't get farther behind on the needed infrastructure. It means things like expanding telework opportunities in both the public and private sector. And so it takes a wide array of ideas and solutions to address the situation.
Phone lines open for afternoon viewers to join our conversation. It's the Virginia District 33 State Senate debate here on News Talk, the first in a series of debates we'll be bringing over the next several weeks, and we're glad you're with us today. Phone lines open for your questions and comments so we can discuss the issues of paramount importance to you. Join us at 703-387-1020. We'll work your questions and comments in as they come in. What do the two of you think of the so-called abusive driver fees that the Assembly, to which you belong and that your party controls, passed this year? They seem very controversial. Lawmakers seem surprised by the upset, and now they're in a legal limbo in the courts because of all the challenges. What do you think of this device for raising money?
Well, I was the first to raise the problems with the abusive driver fees back in April, before it became on the minds of people and after July 1 when it first came into effect. I think it has two fundamental problems. One is that it doesn't treat everyone the same in applying only to in-state drivers. And the other is just a fundamental problem with raising money on a select group of people. I believe that if we need stronger fines to discourage reckless driving, then we should do it for that purpose. And if we need to raise money for roads, then we should do that more directly through something like the gas tax.
Well, actually, I was opposed to them long before April of this year. When I was first elected, I went down to the General Assembly, and I was sworn in about a day and a half after the election. And I couldn't believe, with transportation as big of an issue as it was, that the ideas being circulated were things like abusive driver fees. And I was opposed to them from the beginning. I spoke out against them last year in 2006.
And your vote was?
Well, the Republican majority insisted on including the abusive driver fees in the overall transportation funding package. So while there were things about that package I didn't like, the abusive driver fees being one of them, in the end I did support the overall funding package because given the choice between no funding at all, again, for Northern Virginia and our transportation system, or making some significant progress, making a compromise, and then going back and fixing those things that need to be fixed, I thought was the right approach.
But aren't there some elements of compromise that are so odious that you say, you know what, desperate as the need is, this is too bitter a pill to swallow? In retrospect, do you wish this package had not emerged from the legislature?
Well, what I wished is that the Republican majority that insisted that the abusive driver fees be a part of the final package had realized the arguments that I and others were making at the time, that this was the wrong approach. I think that if we're going to look at public safety, if people aren't paying attention to traffic laws, then and people think maybe raising fines is one way to do it, then we should look at it by first bringing in the data, bringing in some traffic safety experts and approaching it that way. But it is not a way to go about solving our transportation funding problem.
Isn't it a fact that the senator's right, that the Republican leaders in the Assembly don't have a spread the burden evenly approach to things like transportation, that they're looking for a free lunch, and that you end up painting yourself into a corner, if you will, by saying, well, since we can't tax the average Joe, we're going to have to go after, we have to find someone, so we'll pin it on people who tailgate and speed and drive recklessly.
Well, and there are other factors as well.
But isn't that part of it? Do you concede that with nowhere else to go, they had to find the money somewhere because the current traffic situation is untenable, so they looked at these tailgaters, these dangerous, reckless drivers, and said, it may not be pretty, but we can pin them, we can get the money from them.
Well, that is certainly what they did in their perspective. I'm not one who's going to go along with every Republican bill just because it's a Republican bill if I don't agree with it, or a piece of it that I don't agree with. I think it's important to look at legislation on its merits. I would certainly support Democratic proposals if I believe they are worthy and a good approach. And I think that's the best way to govern. I think that's the kind of governance that people are really looking for. It's not partisan, Republican way or Democrat way, but what's the right way to do things?
When we come back, I want to ask you, what should happen now? Should we repeal this and start over, or just kind of live with this and move on? And we want to shift gears too and talk about some other issues like immigration and whatever folks at home want to talk about. A break here. The number, if you'd like to join our conversation, 703-387-1020. More of our discussion with the candidates in the 33rd District State Senate race in Virginia right after this.
Ron Riley weather on News Channel 8. More local, more often.
My closet was a jungle, or at least it felt that way to me. It was cluttered, overstuffed, just plain disorganized. But I've given my closet a total makeover by using space bag storage packs. I've tripled my closet space, and now you can too. Just place your items into the space bag storage pack. Seal the airtight zipper, then vacuum out the air. Look how my things stay compressed and protected. Space bag storage packs are airtight, waterproof, and guaranteed to lock out dirt, bugs, and moisture. Now you can store them in the garage or basement, in the attic, or under the bed. But no matter where you store them, everything comes right back to life, as fresh and dry as the day you put it in. Plus, they're reusable, so you can use them over and over and over again. Use the extra large bag to store bulky items and the large size to store up to 12 sweaters. There's even a medium-sized bag designed to fit drawers and closet shelves. And use our new vacuum seal hanging bag to store up to 10 suits or dresses. You can find space bag products at 15,000 retail stores nationwide, but you can only get this special offer on TV. Call now and we'll send you one extra large, one medium, plus the new hanging bag for just $19.95. But it gets even better. Call now and you'll get this full-length hanging bag to store longer dresses and coats, a $13 value, absolutely free. But that's not all. You'll also get 2 roll-up travel bags so you can pack up to twice as much, a $10 value. That's free too. Altogether, that's 7 bags, a $50 value for just $19.95. Plus, it comes with Space Bag's unconditional money-back guarantee. Think small, think safe, think Space Bag.
Call to find out how you can get a total of 7 space bags of $50 value for just $19.95. This special TV offer is not available in any stores. Call 800-795-0405. Call now.
Welcome back to News Talk here on News Channel 8 and our Virginia State Senate debate. We're talking with State Senator Mark Herring, a Democrat. He represents Fairfax and Loudoun counties, District 33. His challenger is here, Republican Patricia Phillips. Thanks again to both of you for being here. Phone lines open for you to join us with whatever comment or question is on your mind as Northern Virginians get set to go to the polls in November. Every seat in the legislature is up. 703-387-1020 is the number. We'll work your comments and questions in as they come in. 703-387-1020. We'll get back to the issues in a moment, but first let me talk to you, ask you about a little politics. Both houses of the Virginia legislature are controlled by Republicans right now. Most people believe that even after the election, Republicans will hold the House. But the Senate seems to be up for grabs a little bit. Retirements on the GOP that may open up just enough seats for Governor Tim Kaine's gain one House in the legislature. What difference would that state, good or bad, have differing perspectives? And for Northern in particular, if we were one with the Senate flip?
Well, I think it would be a good thing for the state and a good thing in Virginia. Won elected by a wide margin. He had a positive agenda for the future, resulted approach to. And so I think being able to have a majority in the Senate who work to support his be good for the state as a whole. I also think it would be Northern Virginia. If you think of Northern Virginia, number of Democrats who would then take important roles. You'd have the leader of the Senate would be a Northern. You would have Chair Dick Saslaw. You would have the chair of the powerful Senate Finance from Northern Virginia. You'd have a key members from Northern Virginia assuming leaders. So I think it would be good. And then the approach to problem solving to address growth, education, and those are issues where Democrats have the high ground.
Your perspective?
Well, I think the Republicans have a very solid record as tops in terms of management of government, state management. Also has been ranked high as business friendly. I think that's based on the history, the long-term Republican majority that those policies that make it business friendly, that keeps relatively low to others and the like. So I think it's a real advantage to the Republicans and to keep our budget in control as well.
Back to the conversation, what should happen with the abuse of driver fees? We know that might weigh in and really force it. From your perspective, were they missing? And how do you recruit if you feel they were a mistake to even think that the money should be recouped?
Well, the estimates in terms of how much money would be generated are subjective as well. Work to repeal that section of the certain.
And do what then?
Well, I think it's actually be a fairly small amount of the total budget.
Giving the
well, I mean, we need $1 billion in money. That's less than 3% of budget.
But what's the loss to the transport package if you pull the driver piece out?
I believe it was $5,000.
$5,000? Surely it's more than that.
No, it's different. And I would repeal the abusive driver fee. It was the wrong approach getting and it to be removed. You know, I want to look at improving traffic safety. I think fines might have something to do. Pull the data together and the experts. But it is not the right way to raise for the state. Also, the estimates were about $60 million. And there is, in my opinion, that revenue estimates were accurate. We've heard from other states who have followed this. They've said it's very difficult. A lot of these are difficult to. Then people get suspended. And then what do? They don't go to work, or they do drive on a suspended, end up, having to go to jail for a period of time. It's just the wrong to be repealed.
Virginia seems to ground zero to crack down on in the country illegally. We know that this is a hot issue level. All manner of discussions going on with the communities that you represent and that you represent. What should the state, if anything, do to take people who are here out of our communities?
I think to do what we can. We have 12 and 20 million legal aliens in our country, and it has a tremendous on the healthcare system, our courts, our prisons, and we allow the localities to enforce the immigration laws that we have. It's important that we establish laws allowing, encouraging local and state law enforcement to use relations with the federal government to identify illegal aliens that are doing other illegal activities and to begin a different process.
In terms of specific things can and should do, we know what's going on at the local level. We knew there, and lots of complaints aren't doing, but specifically Richmond?
Well, part where there were something like 12 different pieces of legislation, the House of Delegates, with very majorities, bipartisan legislation that failed in the state, and I would certainly work subcommittees and committee level pass some of those common sense legislation.
Senator?
Well, the federal government really has on this. They have failed to secure. They haven't done a good job of enforcing immigration policies, and that's really created a lot for us at the state and local level. Also, I'd like to say very clearly, somebody wants to come to this country should do so lawfully. There are things we can do with the level, and here are a couple of the areas I focused my attention on. Mainly two areas. First, in the area of crime and law enforcement. Second, in the area of employment. In the area of crime and law enforcement, one of the bills I introduced would require courts to do a check on the citizen status of everyone arrested for if they were found to have entered the country. It would deny bail. They were to deny bail and then be brought to justice rather than out on bail where they can abscond, commit other crimes. In the area of employment, you know, one of the reasons they're here is because, and unfortunately there are out there who are hiring these folks flaunting the federal laws in this area. One of the things, co-sponsor a bill that would on those businesses, those federal laws, a crime for an employer to misrepresent the citizenship status of, and those are two controversies. Now the first one didn't, it was left in committee, but it's one of the pieces of the plan on immigration. So I'm glad to see my bill, and they're supporting it now, and we're going to get it through.
I meant to ask this earlier. The abusive driver that we talked about earlier, are there other specific votes that the senator has that perhaps prompted you to get race or that take particular exception?
Well, traffic is a broad problem, and it requires a lot more than in terms of fixing it.
But particular votes.
Say there are probably some with I think there was requiring the motor vehicles to information about people who are not citizens, the voter registrar's office that I would have supported if I had been there. That would information to registrars to control who in elections.
Actually, that's already on the when you fill out the vote. There's a certification on there. So a lot of legislators thought it was superfluous.
Back to the for a moment. We had a piece on earlier today with agriculture in different parts of the country. Wisconsin was one, and Washington's other. Business people, Vegas tourism people were saying without some illegal aliens, undocumented workers, without these people, our economy shut down. Do you take fundamental? Are you in view fundamentally?
Well, I think to get a handle on our immigration process, we have to be able to control immigration at the border.
But the ones who are here?
We are here. The problem is that to reward people who have come legally, and that's really not to the people who have gone through time-consuming and arduous process seeking legal immigration.
There are people here, and the question is, what do you do? We seem to need them, and be here, and they may have kids in the school who bore our soil. Just curious what your take.
Well, I think the thing is that we need to begin to enforce where we can. Local involves when there has a commission of a crime. We need to not tie our hands behind our back and people go with immigration status.
I'll give you the last on that.
Sounds like she thinks it's a good idea, and forward to going in and getting this next year.
State Senator Mark is the Democrat. He represents District. Now, Republican Patricia Phillips is the challenger. She would represent District 33 in Richmond. Both of you for coming in. I appreciate it today. We'll be back with more news right after this.
Sports Talk. Harris on News Channel. More local, more often.
It's a little something I every night since I was a kid. In my pocket change to this old jar. It's much. just what's left after $1. And I never thought I'd get quality life insurance. I spare change.
Until I saw a Colonial Penn. And people our age getting life in such an affordable rate.
If you're 50 to 80, you can get guaranteed acceptance insurance from Colonial Penn. 25 cents a day, just $95 a month. There's no medical exam, no health questions. The average cost of a funeral is $6,500. Big burden to leave your loved one. Colonial Penn makes it easy to help cover your final expense. As long as you're 50 to 85, you cannot be turned down for this guaranteed acceptance coverage. Your never goes up, and your benefit goes down due to age. Your coverage builds over time. Call for free information and gift.
All I did was call to Colonial Penn. All my questions.
It ain't any easier. And we the coverage we should have had.
With change.
Call toll 1-800-335-40 to receive free information, free gift in the mail. That's 1-335-4040. Call now.
Navy SEALs intel on enemy location. Army commanders act. That's the centric warfare. The forces act as one. One Navy, one Marines, one force, one force. Northrop Grumman, Defender.
That is news today. Tomorrow on the program, talk about so-called helicopters. These are moms and dads who do everything for their kids. What young adults need such days? Wednesday, Mayor Adrian Fenty's here. Last week's fire in Adams Morgan raises Mayor Williams gave people at the end of his tenure. On Thursday, we'll talk with Donna Edwards. She almost knocked off Congressman Al here. Now she's gunning for a match. I'm Bruce DePoit. Stay with us.